Hi, folks, and once again, thank you so much for sticking around for our third act community conversation. This is an aspect of our evening that we value so highly here at the Sound Company, and we think the best kind of theater is the kind of theater that can point to the big issues, ideas, and problems and solutions that are being looked at in our community and the work that's being done to achieve it. I have with me here Whitney and Amy from the Returning Artists Guild and Dr. Jesse Glover, who will be moderating this conversation. I'm going to turn it over to them right now. Please give them a round of applause.
Hi everyone, I am Jessie and we're gonna have a conversation, but first I want to invite you to join me in just a brief breathing and grounding exercise. Just an opportunity, if you want to join in, to make contact with yourself in this room, with these other people, and make contact with your breath. So, I heard you all sort of moving into a space of being ready for that, which was very, very cool. So what I want to invite you to do first is just notice your feet making contact with the floor. Good. You can notice your hands making contact with your legs, or resting in your lap, or with the sides of the chairs around you. And you can just notice your body resting against the back of the chair and other parts of the chair. We're going to just do a brief breathing exercise called box breathing. So I'm going to invite you to breathe in to a count of 4, and then hold that breath for 4, and then breathe out to a count of 4, and hold it there for 4, and then we'll repeat a couple of times. Okay. So go ahead and take a breath out, find an exhale. And then breathe in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, breathe out, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. Again, in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. Twice more, in, hold, out, hold, in, hold, out, hold. And now you can just allow your breath to return to its normal rhythm and pace. Thank you for taking a moment to ground down into this space together. I'm glad to be here with you, and I'm really, really, really glad to be here also with Amy Wisman and Whitney Johnson of Returning Artists Guild, 2 extraordinary artists and extraordinary humans. I can't wait to hear from you. So would you mind, I'm gonna ask them a couple of questions, and then they are gonna have a couple of questions for you, and we're gonna have a bit of a conversation. So the first question is really just, could you give us a little bit of understanding of what is the Returning Artists Guild and what is your intersection with it? Could you start, Amy?
Yes. Hello, thank you everyone for sticking around. My name is Amy Wisman. I am the co-founder of the Returning Artists Guild, so I feel a little out of sorts that my co-founder, Kamisha Thomas, is not here, but I'll do my best. We are an abolitionist network of artists, mostly in Ohio, some national, some still inside. Some of us have been released. Not just visual artists, a variety of media happening within the group, and essentially, we have been curating exhibitions and pop-ups and doing community engagement activities and projects for several years, and we are working on building a fully funded artist residency for people when they're released. So. Say something. You want to say, Nadia?
Okay, so I started to participate in the RAG while I was still incarcerated, and that became a grand source of community and integration for me. And when I was released, that became my main source of support and almost like family. Not almost, literally family. And we bind together so hard because we want to bring that to the others that are coming out and to reintegrate, because society has built this connotation on our community, and that's what we're here fighting for.
Thank you so much. And would you mind just really briefly sharing like some good news?
Oh.
Just really, yeah, real quick.
Good news. Good news is we've been funded by the Sozoze Foundation, and we've also just received a grant from Art for Justice, which they're sundowning, but they've been supporting the work of directly impacted artists for about maybe 2 or 3 years.
So one thing I do hope you'll ask is how you might support or otherwise undergird the work of finding a fully funded artist residency for people coming home from a time of incarceration. But I want to ask, I'm going to ask kind of another question, and then they'll point a question at you. So the question really is, like, we just experienced this play that was written in 1928, right? And so I would love to hear you speak to like what you saw this work of art doing, and whether it kind of felt like a relic of the past, whether it resonated, like what came up for you as you watched this work of art? You know, you're artists, and we just all engaged with this. So I'm curious about your reaction there.
I think I'm kind of stuck on this use of the dial-up tone right now. It's like sitting really heavy with me, and it did the last time I saw the play as well. So I'm not sure what I have to unpack there, but yeah, I think what really is striking about this is the ways in which the conditions that women have found themselves in historically and today haven't changed a lot. They may have shape-shifted, or there may have been gains here, losses there, but something that I talk about a lot when I talk about like incarceration is that there were other prisons that came first for me, and they looked like addiction, they looked like unstable childhood, they looked like domestic violence, they looked like mental illness, probably 20 other things. So we were kind of like talking about the use of noise in the film and the way that all of the noise of all of those conditions can trigger the freeze response. And I think for both of us, the freeze response is something that we still deal with now, having additional trauma to get over in terms of incarceration. It's just one more thing that kind of adds to your, I don't know, I want to say your mental illness, but it's deeper than that, because I think that was there first. I think this just like constantly triggers it, and something about the noise is kind of like sitting with me.
To add to that, the noise concept is, I feel, greatly overlooked and throughout the past, and only until recently a huge aspect of that has been mental illness. And obviously within the play, or maybe not obviously, maybe that's just my perspective, there is a trail where she had started to deteriorate mentally and become a shell and become almost like a puppet, and that noise is almost like a a cushion or a deterrent for outsiders looking in. Like, obviously her blind husband's like, ha ha ha, blah blah blah, and she's like obviously about to end her life. To me, like, she's so stressed out, she's so bogged down, and all that noise is just like the buffer, the blindness between the reality and what people are looking at. And it's, the noise is excuses, the noise is a veil. So when I see you and you're suffering, I can like see the noise, like, oh, it's just, she's just a bad day, you just need a pill, you just need a hug, you just do better. Like, the husband kept like repeating himself to her, like, you can do better, you can feel better, like, just do this, do that. And that's not reality. That is not reality. It hasn't ever been reality, and especially for women, and the pressure to get into that role and to perform in that role. And if that's not where you feel comfortable, that mental illness gets stronger and takes over, and that's where we see her deteriorate, and next thing you know, you're in the courtroom.
I
Yeah.
I mean, I can keep going. I'm just gonna stop.
I mean, we could talk forever, probably. But the other, like, the competing theme with the noise is the silence and the voicelessness and who's in control of the narrative and what stories are being told. Yeah, so that's what's sitting with me, is that there's still so many people inside whose stories are not being looked at because of the noise. And so they're just completely powerless and silenced. And I think that's probably why we do the art, you know, that it's this language piece for us. It's this ability to take the noise and make it into something that can speak to other people in a way that we can't when we just describe our experiences.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a little bit, like the noise. So then when you get on stand, when you go to trial, when it's all on your shoulders now it's you. Now there's no noise. Now all that noise is looking at you, and you were the only one with the answers that you do not have. And that's where the art does come in, and that's our opportunity to show you our feelings and what we went through, and to hopefully deter somebody else from going down that path. And that's why it's important to have those uncomfortable conversations and to say these things that we don't want you to hear about our lives that we may feel shamed for, but if it's going to help somebody else, that's what we're doing.
Thank you so much. I just, Whitney, you were just saying in the lobby, you said something about no one asks you when you understand, like, how did you feel that day, right?
Right.
You never, like, what happened to get you to where you were that day? That doesn't happen. But I'm wondering if either of you have a question for this beautiful group of folks that they might get to chew on.
Yes, but I feel like Sean was articulating it
Oh,
so
do
well. But we can.
Yeah, you want to take a go? Yeah, we can. Why don't I start and you can. So it's something we were talking about, something that has been a theme of our conversations. And one of the wonderful things about doing this for a whole weekend is that we get to sort of like build momentum in conversations and fold things together. So not only are you a part of a community here tonight, but of others who are engaged in this conversation and have had sort of courage built or seeds planted. So one of the other pieces that came up is really about this issue of not having one's needs met. You know, and Kamisha, Amy's co-founder, said that people don't commit crimes when their needs are being met. And so, do you want to take the second half of this question? Make it a question.
Question, I think, becomes some of what of her needs are not being met, right? And how maybe could she have gotten those needs met then or now? Like, how is this still relevant now? What are the needs? Are they being addressed differently? So, like postpartum depression, I think, is one that's kind of hidden and was something that contributed to my incarceration. So I'm curious what people think the needs are, and if they're not being met, if you have ideas about how they could be met.
And so rather than just asking you to raise your hand and shout at us. We're going to invite you to actually face each other, right? And find a little group, a cluster of 2 or 3 folks, and grapple with that question for a few minutes in conversation. And then we'll bring it back to the large group. So where did you see the play really wrestling with this idea of a person not having their needs met or having their needs secreted away? And could things be different? Yes? Okay. So the wonderful people are right next to you. So go ahead and make a connection and a little 2 minutes of conversation. Yeah. Thank you so much for picking that question up and running with it. I'm wondering, and Sean is going to be the mic jockey. If any of you have things that you'd like to share, or things that someone else said that you were like, whoa, that's really interesting, or any themes that came up in your conversation that you want to share with everybody else. What do you think? Yeah.
I'm the mic jockey, y'all. Right, so like, we're discussing the levels of the problem, right? So there's clearly, you know, the day-to-day interactions and the levels of things that are going on that are leading to the problems that our main character is dealing with. And I'm wondering, so, you know, we seem to have cultivated a very safe and open space in this setting, and this feels like a group of people that probably is already in acknowledgement of the problems that are being presented in this, you know, in this theater, in this play. And I'm wondering, how do we, as a collective, those that are willing to acknowledge and try to make a change positive forward, how do we cultivate a space to bring in the people that aren't willing to listen? You know what I mean? That's what I feel like I'm grappling with, and it goes beyond just the issues that are being brought up in this play. It goes into a lot of the things that are going on just, you know, in the world we live in the country that we live in the systems that we have designed. And I personally grapple with this a lot, obviously, and I feel like I'm in a position of privilege, and it makes me sad thinking about those that aren't given the same opportunities that I've been granted so far. And I just wonder if like people have ideas on like how do we branch ourselves out from this group of people that is willing to listen and make changes? How do we actually make tangible actions on the side that is not willing to listen? And I think we're all keenly aware of where I'm referencing. And I don't know, I'm just wondering if anyone has thoughts on that.
My grandmother used to say, if you don't want to listen, you'll have to feel. And that was, you know, a thinly veiled reference to getting your ass busted. But I do feel like this is where the arts can play such a powerful role, because it can make things palatable, it can make things beautiful, it can make things entertaining that are none of those things. And so I really believe in the power of the arts to draw people at least a little bit out of their comfort zone, and if there's just that little willingness, then there's potential. But also, for me, abolition is the only answer, and so that kind of steers me away from probably a lot of engagement in like trying to change legislation or something of that effect, because I'm just kind of like, I'm too impacted to care, you know. I'm like overly impacted. So there's that struggle, I think. But what I know is that typically we don't care about the things or care about causes until they directly impact us, right? Like if there's maybe not a disease present in your family, you might not know a lot about that disease, you might not care about that particular cancer or something, but when it's your mom, like suddenly you know everything about it, now you're passionate. And so I think some of the responsibility is actually on directly impacted people, to build platforms for each other and start mobilizing our community. But that being said, we welcome partners. I see a lot of young people here. I hope some of y'all run for office. The boomers will not die. We will not die, so please, you know, if you feel like politically minded, like please engage, but yeah.
Vote in August.
Let me just quickly, I try to speak very little in these things, but let me also quickly say that, you know, Jess and I are intentional intentional about the conversations we try to create. And we also recognize, and we've discussed and talked about how we have kind of a homogenous group of thinkers here. You know, most people that stick around to these things, like you observe, probably have a similar sort of viewpoint on these things. And we've determined that that's okay. And really what these intentional gatherings are meant to do is to grow a unified idea together so that change can happen, and not necessarily to invite some sort of a debate in that. There's different forums for that, and this simply isn't the intention behind this forum. So thank you for observing that and for letting us kind of speak to it just a tad. Do any of our other community members? I want to make sure we get to the question around the needs that you see not being met within the play.
There's a saying that is, to be a woman is to perform. And I feel like we especially see that in our main character, where she's a people pleaser. She's never known what she wants. So especially, like, I felt like in the hospital scene when she kind of had someone taking care of her and looking over her, she just got choked up because there's no explanation for how I feel. It's just what's coming out now, and it's just an explosion. And especially when especially like young people grow up in not the best conditions, by the time that they get to an age or a position where they can ask for things, they don't know how. So that's how I feel like a lot of young people can get in trouble with things, because it's like by the time that they know what their needs are, they don't know how to ask for it, so they just act out and they think that will maybe work.
Yeah. Lovely, well said.
Also, it's about mic job. Bill Donahue. We came up with a lot of things, but what stood out for me most was she was denied to have a chance to breathe. In every scene, even when she's alone, you feel like she's trapped. And we talked also about love. She's denied love as well.
Never had one before, never since, right? And I wasn't the only person that was like, that's weird, I've never had one, why are they doing that, right? So like, there is this system that has criminalized poverty, that has criminalized women's bodies, that has criminalized race, that's criminalized so many circumstances, many beyond a person's control. So it's really pretty easy actually to go to prison if you fall into like a couple of those categories. And Ohio and California are the only two states that have rehabilitation written into their title. Everywhere else is just Department of Corrections. The difference is that California has arts programming as a line item in their state budget. So at least within the arts that I know about, they are making efforts toward vocation, toward recreation, toward art, education, etc. That Ohio is not making, but is still, titling itself that way. And what frustrates me about that is that there's over 800 collateral sanctions in Ohio for a felon, so that's like 800 things you can't do. Maybe it's get a liquor license or own a gun, those ones kind of make sense, but maybe it's get a real estate license or some kind of other entrepreneur business related licensing are a lot of them. And I think there's a lot of talk in the public on one side about being tough on crime, and we all know the problems in that. And then there's talk also about second chances, and what I am coming to feel like now is that I don't need a second chance. This is my first life and I'm still on it. I didn't need to be rehabilitated. I wasn't broken in that way. And so I think there's a lot of shame that's placed on people even after they're released. Like that same dehumanizing force is still very present. It never goes away. And I think that what we want to do is just what everyone else wants, right? Participate and be appreciated and valued and not seen as someone that needs pity or resources. While we may need resources, we don't need them in that way.
I I would like to piggyback off of what you said about the reentry and the rehabilitation in California and Ohio, but what we're missing is that when we watch plays like this and we watch movies and we hear stories and see the scenes and do the hard stuff, is what happens after that? What happens when we come home and we're doing this and we're talking to you? Like, this is new. I think it's new to society to like hear our side and to have compassion and to want to aid in the mental health and aid in the rehabilitation and aid in the addictions and aid in the trauma of the entire process. And that is what is gonna be different. That's what we're gonna make a change in. We're not gonna be doing this play in 100 years and being like, what are we still doing the same? No, what are we gonna do different?
Do you have a question for the crowd? You have a question. Well, that's good.
Yeah, go for it. Okay. So another thing that I've just been sitting with is like, as an impacted person, I'm like when I do these kinds of events or we watch this kind of content, I'm like grappling with, is this some kind of like exposure therapy where if I re-expose this wound enough times, eventually it just like won't bother me? Or is this some kind of like sickness that I have where I'm just like continuing to re-traumatize myself, and to what end? And so I guess I'm wondering from the audience, like when you watch this kind of content, like I don't know if there's true crime fans in the house, but I'm mad at you if you are. But when you watch this kind of content or you take this kind of stuff in, does it make you feel like you're more engaged or you're more aware or you know more, or does it just kind of make you feel more powerless and more maybe depressed about the status of everything? That's a talk to your neighbor question. That's a talk to your neighbor question for like a couple of minutes. Okay, go.
To the larger group, is there anyone who has something that they'd like to share? Maybe one or two folks. Bring your small conversation into the larger group. Yeah?
I won't lie, for me, I feel depressed in a way. I don't know. Because when you go through so much shit, you just, at some point, I don't care anymore. Like, whatever happens, happens. So when you see things like this, you feel kind of depressed. But for me, when I wake up the next day, it's like a reset button. So when I wake up, I come up with another greater resolve to try to fight it. That's why this plays. That's why I'm giving this opportunity by show. So, thank you. Yeah.
Great. Yes. Sir. In our conversation, there was clearly a lot of frustration and anger. But I think, these moments give you the chance to think about what you can do yourself. And, my wife talked about how she's frustrated and angry, but our whole life she was the teacher that the weird kids trusted. She was the person that the kids who couldn't go to their own home, they came to with our kids to our home. And so that's the way you can make it. That's the way you can make a difference while we wait to hopefully coalesce, to get more of the right justice done in the community. But one question I had for you guys is, clearly this organization made a difference to you before you were out. So maybe a little bit, I'd like, what is it, how do you, I understand what you're trying to do as people get released, but how are you reaching in to people while they're still incarcerated to help give them some glimmer of respect or hope or decency?
So the Returning Artist Guild was born out of an art therapy program that I built with two other Jamies, and Whitney was eventually a facilitator in that program as well. So original members of the guild were women that I had personally done time with. That has expanded through meeting other teaching artists, meeting other families with impacted people, other artists, and the support for people on the outside and inside is pretty similar. There's communication, good communication. We've been supporting them with supplies. Get their work ready to hang in exhibitions and kind of do like the last steps. I sell their artwork and I work around the state to make sure that they get 100% of the sale. We've never taken a commission.
That was really important when I was still on there.
Yeah, and so really just, giving like space for this art and working hard to be a surrogate voice for the people that are not able to speak for themselves, but also working really hard to hear what they want to have, what they have to say. And, like professional development is something I think that's on the horizon for us, like how do we do more for the people that are inside? But yeah, does that answer your question? Okay.
Because of time, we're gonna have to wrap, but I do want to just invite Whitney to kind of give some closing thoughts.
Okay, so maybe Jesse and I had a little side conversation a minute ago, and she was taken back by something I had mentioned. I guess we just have two different perceptions all the time, and that's because we were directly impacted, and those of you that are not can't see from this perception, but there's a daily struggle socially to be able to be a, talk about, remember when we were in prison? That word alone, kills people. It scares them. They don't want to hear it. They don't want to know. I have been home for 3 years, and I have people that I see at work every day that have no idea I was even in jail for a day, and I was in prison for many years. So just to get rid of that connotation in your community is very important, and it's the first step, because I even recently have been, I go to college, and I had to go to the actual college and take classes, and my professor was teaching these young impressionable children that she could never live by a felon because that's dangerous for her children, and I just was sick, and I just couldn't say anything because I'm just in a flood of people that are now looking at prison and inmates and ex-felons and all these things in such a nasty light, and it's why are we still putting that poison out there? Why are we still treating us like we're not people? And if we're allowed back into society, obviously, what's the problem? So that was something that was really impactful to you, but is a regular, everyday struggle for me.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the sound company for creating space for this conversation.
Yes.
Thank you, Amy and Whitney, for sharing your stories and your information. And thank you to all of you for being in this space and for thinking hard. I hope that the question that you have, you will ask. You have a question? Yeah?
Sure.
Okay, go for it.
I have a loud mouth. Where can we find your art?
Excellent, great question. At
The Returning Artist with an S, because there's more than one of us.
Is it what's in the playbill?
Yep, on Facebook and Instagram at the Returning Artist Guild.
July show.
July.
July exhibition at the Vanderelli Room.
July show at the Vanderelli Room in Franklinton. Yes. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your following and connecting with the Returning Artist Guild in the future. And I hope you go away with a little seed that's starting to germinate of whatever you need for today, and then it will continue to grow and bloom. Thank you.